Hello, my name's Whalley. Welcome to Lenscraft. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the Nik Control Points. I was recently doing a presentation and I'd assumed that everyone in the audience was quite used to using control point and that these were very intuitive, and as a result I forgot to explain some of the basics. So I want to put that right in this video. At the moment I have this image open in Viveza and we're going to demonstrate control points using Viveza. Now the first thing I'll stress is that although control points have been implemented across the entire Nik collection, they actually work differently in different applications. But Viveza is probably a good starting point because if you understand that, you can try the same techniques in the other Nik collection. The first thing I'm going to do is actually add a control point now to this image. So we can go up here and click to add the control point, and as we move the cursor over the image it will turn to a point which we can now use to center adding a control point. So first off, I'm going to use a control point to select the lighthouse, given that it's very dark. So I simply place my cursor over the lighthouse, I click, and now I have a selection of the lighthouse. Now if you want to see what's selected, you can actually use this mask option here, and by clicking this I can show the mask. So immediately you can see a white mask has been created around the dark areas, and what's happening here is that the control point is making a selection based on exactly what's below the central point in the control point. Now if you want to see how wide the control point actually is, you can use this top slider here, and as I move it in and out you can see the control point changing size. And as I do that, you should notice that the mask is changing size as well. Now just to help you, in case you're not familiar with masks, anything you see selected in white means we'll be able to adjust it. Anything that's black isn't going to be adjusted, and anything that's grey will receive some sort of adjustment but not at full strength. Now the thing to notice here is we've placed our selection here and the control point is actually only probably around this size. Despite this, areas outside of the control point are being selected, and the reason that happens is Viveza is creating a mask that will blend our adjustments with the rest of the image. If it didn't do this, you'd find that any adjustment you applied looks very unnatural and doesn't blend in with the rest of the image. So it is dynamically creating a mask and blending it with the rest of the image. So again, as I size this, you can see different areas start to get picked up. So even here we've got part of the clouds being picked up by the control point. Now if I take this control point and I drag it over the clouds and release it, the selection this time is being made in the clouds, and the pier and the lighthouse are not being selected at all, so they won't be adjusted. Now let's turn off the mask and we'll start to look at this interactively. As I move my control point around, what's happening is Viveza is sampling what's immediately below this central point and making a selection from the rest of the image based on what is below this central point in terms of colour, tone, texture, and the size of the control point itself. Now at the moment it's quite difficult to see what's being selected, so one way around this is to hold down your control key on your keyboard, and if you're using a Mac it's the command key, and as you do that and move the control point around, you see a real-time updating of the mask to make a selection based on what's below the control point. As soon as you release the mouse, the screen actually returns back to a normal preview, and that's really helpful. So even if you're sizing this control, as long as you've got the control key on your keyboard held down, you can see the mask as you either move or resize the control point. Another really neat thing to do is to copy control points. So let's say we want to apply an adjustment to the lighthouse, and we'll open up the shadows. We'll add in a little bit more contrast, and we'll also add in some structure, and immediately that's lightened up our lighthouse. Now we'll add another control point here to the sky, and we will size that to make a selection, and we'll add in some contrast, we'll add in a little bit of saturation, we'll add in some structure, and we'll add in some warmth. That's possibly going a little bit too over the top. Let's just reduce the brightness slightly to give us a nice feel to the sky. And now let's say we want to make a selection further down here. So what we can do is we can hold down the Alt key, and you'll notice as I do that and I hover over the control point center, my mouse icon changes to have a little plus, and that's indicating that when I click and drag, I'll be creating a copy of my control point. I can then release my new control point on the horizon, and if you notice, it's got exactly the same settings as the control point I've copied it from. So that's a great way of duplicating control points. If you want to see the mask for all three of the control points, you can simply select this to show all, or you can deselect one of the control points or two of them to show exactly what each control point is now selecting. When you come to use other Nik Collection tools, you'll find control points in there. They're equally as intuitive to use, although quite often there are slight variations. Color Effects Pro, for example, doesn't allow you to show the interactive mask by holding down the control key, and instead you need to use the show mask option over here. Even so, it's still a really useful tool. I hope you found that interesting. Stay tuned for more tips in the future.